I have just woken up on the brand new Aberration remaster for ARK Survivor Ascended, with some new items and new creatures like the brand new Yi Ling, but at least there are no longer any more basilisks in the portal area. Oh, of course there's a basilisk here! I'm going to give myself 100 days to try and defeat Aberration and Alpha Rockwell once and for all.
I'm afraid you've made a fatal error in judgment, Survivor.
So I spawned in at the portal and quickly started farming some bushes and was greeted by this lovely level 110 moss chops, a perfect starter tame if it didn't require raw prime fish meat to tame. There wasn't too much stuff here that was useful to me, so I left. I said goodbye to the resident portal area basilisk, found this explorer note and then jumped down into the mushroom forest. Once there, I punched up a tree for wood and thatch and made myself a pit. Using the pick, I hit a rock for flint and crafted a hatchet. I made some spears as well as placing down this campfire to cook some meat that I got from this dodo. I'd like to just take a quick second to say that Rampy the Raptor God on ARK and I have launched a small business selling dinosaur toys with aims to give pre-loved dinos a new home. If this is something you'd be interested in, then it would mean the world to us if you checked out our website and maybe even supported us. But let's get back to the video. Once the food was cooked, I set off towards this little place under the metal structure where I knew there would be some metal. I wanted to use this place as a sort of temporary base, so I placed down a few foundations whilst having terrible vision because I accidentally ate a red mushroom. I made my way towards the lake to get water as I was thirsty, but I did notice a green drop in the water, but I didn't feel like risking myself by going into the water just yet. Back at base, I was busy farming more materials, but stopped as I found this level 125 dodo with a baby. So I killed it and claimed my very first tame. I brought my dodo back to base and being a great parent I am, I went on the defensive as I spotted a couple ravagers nearby and nobody was getting to my dodo. Whilst they attacked the turtle, I joined in. However, the turtle didn't exactly last too long and they soon started to chase me. I had boulders though, so I could trap them, but they broke out before I could kill any of them. I got them to aggro onto this stego, but for some reason I then tried to kill this crab, but got stuck up on by the ravagers and died. I managed to get my things back quite easily as the ravagers were busy attacking something else and returned back to base where I was able to make myself this snazzy little outfit. I hit level 20 to unlock the forge of metal tools, so I got one built, placed and began smelting the metal that I'd already collected. I used the metal to make a smithy and then a pickaxe. With metal tools now in my possession, I used them to farm up a bunch more metal, and whilst the metal cooked I went and explored, but ran into this Yi Ling which began attacking me, so I ran for my life trying to avoid its spikes. On my way back to base I ran into some spores which almost killed me, and then ran into another set which I didn't survive from. Then I fell off the side of this cliff and fell to my death. I finally got my things and then tried to tame myself a dino. Ah! No, what was it? So I went back and got my things again and decided that the raptor who killed me would be a good first tame. It knocked out and I killed the Titanobur for prime meat. It tamed and its first task was taking on this Sarco which attacked us. I kept exploring but went a little bit too far.
Oh no. Oh no. Where am I? Am I stuck? Get juked on a tree. Rip raptor! Oh, this might be a rip me.
After dying a couple more times, I decided to just leave my stuff there and restart back at base. So I rebuilt some of my gear and then died soon after to another ravager. And then I got stuck in another death cycle, where I died many times. I really needed a tame, and the map was quite happy to oblige.
Raptor, see that? Right there.
It was only level 45, but it was better than nothing, so I tamed it. I was also constantly running out of water, so I set up a few water tanks to get a tap running from my base connected to the lake. I then went out to go tame myself a parasaur, as I needed a berry farmer to get narcotics to begin taming more creatures, but the levels weren't exactly very good. I found a green drop which had some taming equipment in, and I used it on this parasaur which was only level 55, but it was the highest I could find. It tamed and I named it Paris. Whilst leading Paris back to base, I spotted another parasaur that was even higher, so I knocked it out and tamed it as well. I used one of the parasaurs to farm up some berries and mushrooms to make narcotics, which were quite handy as I spotted a level 135 raptor just outside my base, which I bowlered and then knocked out and tamed. I used my new raptor to head over to the blue zone to get some blue crystals, where thankfully no nameless or anything had spawned as I didn't have a light pet on me just yet. However, the journey back to base wasn't as peaceful, as I ran into one of those Yi Lings, which is just super annoying, and then into a Ravager. I managed to escape both as they aggroed onto other things and returned back to the safety of my base. Realising I needed a light pet for my trip to the blue zone, I found and tamed this level 70 bulb dog. I also found another good level raptor who I tamed so I could begin breeding mine, and that's exactly what I did as soon as I got back home, as I wanted some raptor babies to make my own pack. I hatched the first egg, and whilst it grew up I went out to get some wood with my parasol, only to be ambushed by a Yi Ling, who I led back to base to kill. I then found myself a Dodicarus that I wanted to tame as I needed to farm stone. It was only level 15, so it knocked out fairly quickly, and it also tamed quite quick as well. I used it immediately to hit up some rocks to farm stone, as I also continued to breed more raptors. Whilst out farming materials, I saw a few red gems dropped by a roll rat, and I wasn't going to say no to them as they're needed for a gas collector, and this is the best way to get them in the early game. As I returned back to base, I saw another issue. A Diplodocus was attacking my base, and now obviously they do no damage, but they're just super annoying. So I set all my tames to attack, and it was killed pretty quickly. I spent some more time farming wood so that I could make behemoth gates, so when I eventually moved to my forever base, I could secure it off properly. I also made some stone walls, as I didn't have enough materials to make only behemoth gates around the perimeter of the new base. I even buckled up one of these carts from Bob's Tall Tales to a parasol to help move my stuff over, mainly for the dodo and bulb dog as they are quite slow. With everything packed up onto my creatures, I set off to find a new base location. However, my journey didn't get too far until I spotted some.
Oh, Cosmo. Oh, look at the little guy. Hey, buddy. I don't curfew right now. Get it. I mean, Perry, you don't have to get involved, but if you want to. Can I not hit it? There they go. Shred it. Lovely.
We ran into another Yi Ling, which was destroyed pretty quickly, but it was a level 130 and I would have loved to tame it.
This is where I even want to be going.
Guys, run away. Oh my god, I think we got lucky and it's got stuck. Oh, it's unstuck. Run.
Come on. Wow. Why was I scared?
We got into a few more fights with Yi Lings and then hit a big roadblock. A spino that was level 100. And to be honest, I think I'll probably come back later and try and tame it. I brought my gang to this flattish land. There's water nearby, a gas collector on the other side, and it's super close to the blue zone where I can get metal. So all in all, I think it's actually a pretty good base location. I then set up some thatch foundations for a temporary base before I began building the actual one. And then I began building the wall to the base. I got a water source set up from the nearby river, and then got rid of some of the rocks in my base to help when I eventually build, and plus it gave me some more materials to build with, as well as chopping down some mushroom trees in the base. I then began building up the perimeter wall a bit higher so that no spinos could simply walk into my base. However, that was taking quite a while and I got bored, so I went back to my old base to hunt for some trilobites by the lake, for silica pearls and chitin. On my way back I spotted this beauty, a bright blue lystro who I just had to tame. However, getting it back to base did make me question actually taming it. I know you're trying your best, but you are so slow. I got my lystro back to base without issue, and then returned back to that lake that I was just at to look for more silica pearls, so that I could make electronics and then a chainsaw. And I'd remembered back in ASC that there were actually silica pearls here, but for some reason I couldn't find them anymore. So I then went on an adventure to the big lake to the north of the map to see if there were any there. But it didn't take long for trouble to happen, as I was chased off a cliff by a pack of ravagers, one which was max level 150, and my raptor was then killed. I somehow managed to escape on foot, so I completed the rest of the journey, and finally made it to the lake. I managed to find a few pearls and ended up with exactly 300 of them, and I now had a simple job of swimming across the lake right next to Spino, and then running all the way back to base naked. My first obstacle was this cliff, which I had to jump off, and I survived thanks to Aberration's reduced fall damage. I didn't like the idea of being entirely naked though, so I made some cloth armour with fibre that I had farmed, and with a couple boulders in my hand I continued back to home. As I got close I ran over some poisonous mushrooms, then got attacked by Yi Ling, but I survived both, until a Gigantoraptor stomped me to death. But at least it was close to base, so I could now take a raptor over to get my things back. With the silica pearls now back at base, I used them to make 100 electronics and then a chainsaw, so I could take down the remaining fungal trees in my base. That wood plus some stone farmed on the Dodic was used to finally complete the perimeter of my base. Now it was time to start building the base itself. I noticed this flat area on one side which had quite a few rocks which needed to be destroyed first, but there were quite a lot of bushes left, so I needed to go out and tame a more effective berry farmer, a trike. I found a level 100 who I knocked out, but then it got attacked by a raptor who I was able to kill, but it ruined the taming effectiveness. I would have still tamed it, but then a crab, a sarco and ravagers began attacking it, so I left to go find myself another one. And I did, as I knocked out this level 65. It tamed without being attacked this time, and now I just had the fun job of walking it back to base, which had some problems.
For God's sake.
I walked back to base, trikeless, but then spotted a level 100 stego with a baby. So I whipped up a gang of raptors and went out to take out all the adult stegos so I could claim the baby and walk it back to base. Once my stego was fully grown, I used it to clear the berry bushes and trees so I could finally begin placing the foundations for my base. I got the forges placed and then a fabricator, preserving bin, a tap for water and a campfire, and a bunch of storage and my smithy. With my base now being almost complete, I went on a trip to the blue zone to see what was there, and I saw some interesting things.
Dude, what? Is that a shadow main? Oh. Oh. Why is that here?
I wanted to find myself an Anki in the blue zone, but in typical ARK fashion, it decided to become the most rarest creature in the game, as I struggled to spot even one. So I left the blue zone and even fought a drake that was chilling on the exit. I then made my way over to the other blue zone entrance to look in parts of the blue zone that I couldn't reach yet. Yeah, there were none.
Oh, that's a pyro main. Oh no. It's rapid? I'm gonna have to fight it. How much health does this thing have? It fell off. But I'm dead. Pyro main.
My stuff now being basically impossible to retrieve, I spawned back at base and rebuilt. Realising I would need a stronger tame than a raptor, I made my way to the river to find a good spino, and I found a whopper. Level 135 male spino, so I placed down some bear traps and got it to walk into them, and now I just needed to place some gates that I'd made around it. However, I wasn't exactly the quickest about it, and it got out the bear trap and walked off. I realised that at certain angles the spino couldn't actually hit me because of the gates, so I used this to my advantage. The idea was great, until the spino torpor ran. It managed to get stuck, which allowed me to knock it out, and now I just had to wait for the spino to tame. The spino tamed and I brought it back to base, where I didn't have enough silica pearls to make the saddle. I did then spot a level 120 female raptor, which was better than any of my females already, so I tamed it and brought it back to base. I then made my way to the lake again to find trilobites to get silica pearls to make the spino saddle. However, I was struggling to find any, so I left and bumped into a level 115 raptor, who I also tamed. It turned out that the 17 silica pearls I just farmed was actually enough to make a saddle, so I made one and now I could finally ride my spino. I then went out to farm some green gems and also made and placed a gas collector right here in my base. On day 18 I found this green drop with a pretty good sickle BP in it, and I apologise for the terrible video quality. I just moved to another PC and forgot to check the recording settings, so it's pretty terrible for like a day. I then did find a level 90 spino who I trapped, knocked out and tamed, and brought back to base. I then thought it was time to look into cryopods, as my army was starting to get quite large. So I got the materials but was short on oil. So I took my spino out to the rivers to begin swiping them in hopes of killing a trilobite and getting the extra oil I would need. With the oil collected, I found a supply drop to craft the cryopods, but I couldn't reach the drop. While I was trying to find another, I saw a crab which had a baby, and it was a pretty good level at 75. So I killed the parent and claimed the baby, and set off to find another drop. It was only on day 21 that I finally found it. I placed the items in and began crafting the cryo fridge, but for some reason then transferred all the items out and lost it. I couldn't find another drop, so instead I returned back to base to collect more materials to make the cryo fridge again. I eventually found another, a blue one in the water. I placed all the materials inside and crafted the fridge and then 3 cryos, as that is all I could afford for now. With them made, I was able to cryo up the crab that I just claimed, who is now fully grown, as it had taken me that long to find a drop. I then tamed myself a new bulldog, as I'd lost mine in the last adventure down to the blue zone. I also tamed a female so that I could breed them, but neither were the greatest level. I got back to base and began breeding them, as I'd always felt with bulldogs that it's good to just have a bunch spare lying around, so that they can passively get XP and you can boost that charge capacity, so that when it comes to needing them for caves and boss fights, they're actually quite good. With one grown up, I could now re-enter the blue zone with comfort that no nameless would spawn. I was once again looking for an Anki in the blue zone, but the spawns just felt off, as there wasn't much life at all, and when there was some, it was never an Anki. I did find a wild knocked out iguanodon, which was pretty weird, and a yellow drop with some okay loot, and then I finally found it. An Anki which was level 115. I killed its buddy to make it easier to tame, which didn't end well, as the Anki ended up getting obliterated by everything. So I had to go search for another one, and I did, as I found a level 60, which, considering how long I've spent looking, I'll take it. I knocked it out, and whilst I waited for it to tame, I died to some freezing spores, which would have been quite an issue had I not placed a sleeping bag down just moments before. So I spawned in right next to the Anki and then left on my spino to head back to base, where I made a glider, a Karkinos saddle, and picked up a couple cryopods, one with my Karkinos in and one for a raptor, in case I got stuck getting back to the blue zone. And then I flew back down into the blue zone, but I didn't get very far. That's okay, as I brought the raptor for this very reason. I eventually made it back to my Anki and picked it up with my crab and made the long journey back to base. With an Anki now in my arsenal, I took it out for its one purpose, to farm metal. From the trip I got 3,600 metal, which wasn't too bad. I got myself an electrical generator set up and then continued breeding up my bulb dogs and also my spino so that I could get one with imprint boosts. I then also set up a couple air conditioners, as I was getting quite hot around my base with all the forges running. I then claimed some of the bulb dogs which had now been born, so I always had a spare pile of them. Whilst everything grew up, I took the Anki out to farm some green gems, but mainly for the crystal, so that I could make an industrial grill, as I was starving and had no food left in my base at all. I then took my spino out and saw this roll rat, and I wanted to tame it, so that I could get the honey easily. So I then went out and found myself a bear to tame, and whilst it tamed I found a level 145 baby ravager running around. So I tamed it. I cried up the ravager, as I didn't really fancy walking a baby back to base. I then collected my bear and headed home. Using my bear and this little ramp, I collected some honey from a beehive, but ran into some trouble on the way home where my bear survived with just 28 HP. Before taming the roll rat, I did another metal run. This time I got a little bit more than last time, as I came back with just 6.5k of it. Whilst it smelted, I took out one of my spinos to kill the spino population, so that I could get more to spawn and hopefully get some better levels to spawn, so that I could have the best spino possible before I entered the red zone. And it worked, as I found a level 120 spino. I managed to trap it in some gates rather unconventionally, but nonetheless it was stuck. I knocked it out, tamed it, and brought it back to base in a cryopod. I then spotted a level 115 roll rat and I wanted to tame that. So I took my bear out to get some more honey, as the previous lot had expired, but ran into some difficulties. I ended up just getting the honey by hand and then began the taming process. After a few honeys, it was tamed, but I was short on cementing paste to make it saddle. So I took out my Dodecarus to farm up some stone, to craft some cementing paste in a mortar and pestle, and with its saddle crafted, I took it out to give it a test, and boy did it get a lot of wood. Over 350 pieces from each mushroom tree, and I got enough wood to even craft the Zeppelin, one of the Bob's Tall Tales DLC items. I filled it up with some gas and took flight, and to be honest, it just felt really weird being able to fly, as there are no creatures on Aberration that actually let you fly. So I parked it back at base. I then moved on and made some scuba gear so that I could then fly over using the Zeppelin to the northern lake, and I could actually fit a spino onto it, which I thought was pretty cool. I was also looking for an anglerfish, as they are the best silica pole farmers in the game. However, I couldn't spot any in this lake. I did spot this loot drop, which looked like it was under the mesh, and then found some silica pearls to farm by hand. Having not found much, I left and went back to base. I used what little silica pearls I found to make electronics, as I was starting to move to the stage where every upgrade to my base was needing electronics, like air conditioners, so that when it comes to breeding, I could hatch the eggs properly. The first 3 eggs I hatched were spinos, who had been breeding in the background. All I was looking for right now was just to combine the best stats onto one creature. And if not, the babies were killed and it would level up my current spino. After not too long, I hatched a spino which had all the good stats, and once it was grown up, I took it out for a test, and it was doing some pretty good damage right out the bat. The first thing I did was upped its health to 12.5k, and then the rest of its points went into melee, and it was slowly turning into quite a beast. One thing it didn't kill was this level 145 baby crab, who I just had to claim. I cried it up and brought it back to base, and gave it the fitting name of Crabbers. I wanted to now work on taming a Yi Ling, but first I had to place a crop plot, as they are a rather unique taming method. The seed that I planted was a plant species Y, which fruits a sort of flashbang item, so whilst I waited for it to grow, I did another metal run. One that would be quite costly. Why is... oh, my crab is super low. Can I pick up the Anki? What? Oh, rip Anki, man. Rip Anki. I managed to get back to base with my crab still alive, but the same can't be said for the Anki. So I then flew off to the blue zone to go find myself another Anki. I eventually found one of the rarest creatures in ARK, and to my surprise, it was a parent. So I picked up both parent and child with my crab and flew back to base. I knocked out the Anki whilst the crab was still holding it, tamed it, and then claimed the baby, so that if I was to lose an Anki, I would always have a backup. So whilst it grew up, I went back to breeding spinos, as I still needed a male with the good stats to breed with the female that I hatched a few days ago, and luckily I got it fairly quickly. So whilst that spino grew up, I went out exploring. Oh my god, is that an alpha crab? It is? What? Back at base, I began breeding my 2 spinos with the best stats, so I could get quite a few females to begin looking for mutations. But I got bored of waiting for them to hatch, so I found this little thing. A little Cosmo, who I tamed with some chitin. Cosmo has a swing mechanic similar to Spider-Man, however I couldn't really get it to work. Nonetheless though, I brought the cute little spider back to the safety of my base. Enough time had now passed to allow my crops to grow, so I collected the plant species Y from them and headed out to go find myself a Yi Ling to tame. I found a level 15, then a level 35, but I wanted much better than that. I found a level 80, which I flew a flashbang at, but that wasn't how you tamed it. And then I died. I tested a few things on this level 10, but I just couldn't work out how to get its torpor to rise. I tried some more to get it to work, but only ended up dying. I managed to find level 140 in all the chaos though, and I started the dance with that, as I just watched a video on how to tame it. What I had to do was wait for it to swoop, and then I'd throw a flashbang. However, I couldn't if it started attacking along the ground. I managed to get it to swoop, however timing it right is so difficult once you start this. I managed to do it properly on the 3rd swoop, and again, but died. One of the many annoying things about the Yi Ling is that it just shreds through your armour, so when I spawned back at base I made 2 sets of flak before heading back out to tame it. I'm dodging these like the Matrix, man. Oh, this thing is so difficult to tame. Did I get it? I didn't get it. No!
Many unbearable hours later.
I finally got it down after what felt like an eternity, and now it was time to go get some food for it. I had finally finished taming what I think is possibly the most difficult and painful tame in ARK. Let's just hope it's all worth it. You know what, just kill me. Just kill me. I got my things back and killed this Yi Ling that was sticking around just to gloat, and then returned back to my base, vowing to never ever tame a Yi Ling ever again, and to kill everyone in existence. Things only got better for me though, as I took my Anki and Crab up to the blue zone to get metal, but ran into some frozen spores which knocked me out and killed me. I managed to get back there on a spino and killed the basilisk before the Crab and Anki or even the bulldog died, and then brought everyone back to the safety of my home. With the difficulties I was having in the blue zone, I decided to make some has gear so I could go into the red zone, which was even more dangerous. But before I could do that, I fell into the blue zone from my base and then died again. So I then spent some time hatching more spinos so I could easily level up my current spino before I took on the red zone. I took the spino over to the healing plant and waited for it to heal. Once done, I healed up a second, a female, so I could get the mate boost, and then took on the alpha crab that I'd seen earlier. Oh, that was pretty easy. Oh, look at those levels. At base I made some climbing picks and then jumped off the cliff and glided down and over deep into the red zone and towards the rock drake trenches. And as I came in for landing, I saw quite a few pink eggs waiting to be collected. Once down, I threw out my spino, climbed down to the first egg, which was level 80, so I took it, as that's a pretty okay level. I then jumped to another nest and waited for all the rock drakes who got angry that I stole an egg to arrive so I could take them out. Once dealt with, I checked the next egg, which was level 95, a small upgrade, and I took this one so that hopefully more eggs could spawn in, and more drakes would attack so I could take them out. The next egg was level 10, so I took it so the nest could respawn. I then found a level 70, followed by a 15, and then I found the big one, level 190. So I stole it, killed all the angry drakes, and then checked a couple more nests and looted some black pearls, swam across this pink water trying not to go too deep and take damage, fought some more rock drakes, and then walked up the path out of the rock drake trench and into the red zone, and then into the blue zone where I spotted an alpha basilisk. And in my previous playthroughs of Ab, these guys are so rare, so I had to use this opportunity to kill it right now. After, I made my way out of the blue zone and into the green, and then back home, with what was a rather successful trip. Before hatching the drake, I used some of the skins in the new DLC to make my base a bit prettier, and then placed down a bunch of aircon units. But before I hatched the egg, I wanted to go back down into the red zone to get red crystal, which I needed to make the rock drake saddle. To do this, I decided to take the Zeppelin over. However, I learned a quick lesson. It takes radiation damage which ruins its health, so I gave up and flew back to base on my broken Zeppelin. So instead I used a glider and flew down to the red zone, landing directly next to where I knew there would be some red gems. So I quickly found them and then used a climbing pick to get out and into the blue zone, where I used my spino to walk back to base. And then I went back into the blue zone once more, as I remembered I would actually need some nameless venom, so back I went without a light pet to get some to spawn. And you need nameless venom, as that is the only thing a rock drake will eat as it's growing up. So once I'd got a little bit of it, I placed it in a preserving bin and hatched my drake. Whilst it grew up, I made the saddle and then imprinted it with just a cuddle. Once grown, I equipped the saddle and then took it out for its very first flight on a rock drake, my first one on ARK Survival Ascended, and it was pretty fun. I then took my drake into the blue zone water area to look for an anglerfish, as I'd learned this is actually where they spawned. The very first one I found was a level 135, so I guess we found the target to tame. I first had to clear the area from dangerous creatures like these eels, and then began to knock it out. But it wasn't that easy, as I had an army of friends with it. I ended up losing where it was because there was just so many, but I did find this level 150, so I began to tame that instead. After many arrows, I eventually knocked it out. I healed up my rock drake whilst I waited for it to tame, and once it did, I cried it up as it had no use to me here in this blue water, and I flew back to base. I repaired my scuba and then flew up to the northern lake and threw out the new angler, wanting to collect some more silica pearls as it was pretty good at collecting them. And it was pretty good as I was getting 180 of them per pearl. And I ended up getting quite a few thousand of them. When I got back, I went and done another metal run, as the reason I was getting all these pearls in the first place was to make electronics, and to make them I also needed metal. And as metal runs go, this went fairly smoothly. Until this happened.
What? Oh no. Oh no.
I didn't make it out alive, and by the time I returned on my Drake, my bulldog had been murdered. When I eventually recovered, I got everything back, and then I took my Anki out to farm crystal from these green gems. I then made my way to the depths of the red zone to get black pearls, but even that didn't go very well.
What? How do I get unpicked? Ah, crap. Oh no.
So when I spawned in back at base, I had to make some more has gear and then a glider to fly back down to where I just died. I managed to hop onto my Drake before I took too much damage and then took out the crab followed by the other Drake. I got my things and then farmed a few more black pearls before I began the climb back up to base. The black pearls were needed for this robot, which all I needed now to craft was polymer, which can easily be gotten from killing crabs. Once I'd got enough, I brought it all back to base and crafted the Sir 5R M8. What an interesting name.
Hey. Oh. It's tiny.
I was expecting something bigger from the trailers, but I guess size doesn't matter too much. I put the robot on harvest mode, but it just stood still. I'm sure you guys probably know how to use it by now, but I was playing this all on day one, so I just had no clue. I was trying to repair all the has gear that had broken from when I died from getting the black pearls, but I'd run out of crystal. So went on yet another trip in my Yankee to farm some up from these green gems. And I ended up getting quite a lot, so hopefully I don't ever have to go back out and farm more crystal. I repaired all my has gear so I could head back down the rock drake trench to get another egg. However, this time the levels weren't very generous, as I found a level 55, 15, 25, 105, 20, 20 again, and eventually a level 175, which was more the kind of level I was hunting for. On my way out I found a level 5 and a level 30, which I'll happily take with me. When I got back to base, I threw out the level 175 and 130 and let them incubate by the aircons. I imprinted both to 100% with a simple walk. And it was actually good timing to raise them up, as it was currently 90% night, which means exploration on the surface will be much easier as I could spend longer on it. So I spent some time looking for the entrance to the large surface, the one that's connected by the green zone and the red zone, as obviously I live by the motto go big or go home, and I wasn't going to the smaller surfaces. I found the entrance, stepped inside, and quickly realised just how many Reaper Kings there were. Thankfully my Drake was so quick that they wouldn't aggro onto me though. And then I found my first drop. I quickly looted it and flew away before checking what I got, as I was being chased by some Reapers, and once I did I saw how good a drop I'd actually just got. 743 armor flak leggings blueprint and a 105 megalosaurus saddle blueprint, which for Aberration is insane. That's quite possibly one of the best first drops I've ever had. I was flying around looking for more drops, but instead found what looked like an Alpha Reaper, as it was slightly bigger, and that's good. I'll need to kill it later on if I want to do Alpha Rockwell. The next drop I found was also insane, as it had a 268 damage long neck in it. The next had some decent chitin armor, and then I found one which had a worse long neck than the one that I just found, so it was pretty useless to me. And it was now 4 AM and I could start seeing embers floating up from the sky, so I assumed that the sun was close to rising and thought it would be best to leave. On my way out I was greeted by another drop right by the entrance, but unfortunately it didn't have anything that good inside. I brought all my goodies back to base, placing the blueprints in the library storage that I had crafted, and then the rest into the smithy. Having got that megalo saddle blueprint and the long neck, I gathered it would be best to start crafting some trank darts and to go tame some megalos. But before doing that, I took a quick trip to the depths of the red zone to farm up some more black pearls so I could try this linked storage thing, which I think is similar to the dedicated text storage on ASE. But when I placed it, it said it needed 5 minutes to boot up, so I'll guess I'll check back on it in 5 minutes time. So whilst I waited, I went into the blue zone to kill some jellyfish to get biotoxin. Back at base, I made narcotics to turn into trank darts to be mixed with biotoxin I just got to make shocking darts. I picked up some bear traps and dino gates and then headed off to the blue zone to find some megalos to tame, but I could only find either really low levels in the blue zone or almost none in the red zone, as I searched what felt like the whole of it, and it was only after heading back into the blue zone that I found one, a level 115 with a child. So I trapped it using some dino gates while sat on the back of my rock drake, as they didn't appear to aggro onto me whilst I was there, and then I knocked it out. Whilst it tamed, I went off to go find some more, and more I found, as I found level 150 at the top of a rock stack. So I lured it off the stack and then trapped it using some more dino gates and knocked it out. And whilst that one tamed, I went to see if I could find an even better one than the 115. And I did, as I found a 120, so I'll give this a try as well. I went and checked the 115 and saw that it was now awake, but still taming, and it hadn't run out of torpor. It was just really weird. So I knocked it out again, but accidentally hit it when it was down. But it continued to tame from where it left off, which doesn't normally happen when your dino wakes up when you're taming it. So as it finished taming, I collected the now tamed 150 megalo, cried it up and brought it back to the safety of base, ready to be bred with whichever megalo was better. But I then looked at the megalo saddle and I realised it was quite expensive, and I did a lot of fibre. So I made this sickle blueprint that I found earlier in the 100 days and went out swinging to go get some fibre and made one of the saddles. I used it to rearrange the megalos and then set them to breeding, as I then sat in for the long process of hatching eggs and checking to see if they got the good stats, and if not, I killed them. Not long later I hatched a male with the perfect stats, and now I just needed to find the female, which I happened to hatch 3 of at once. I took one of my spare megalos and well, it seemed pretty strong, so I think I'm actually going to scrap the spinos and just use these for the boss fight. With a few females busy breeding, I was hoping to get mutations, and I did, as I hatched up this really cool blue one who had a health mutation. So I put my breeding on hold as it grew up and then went out to do my very first cave, the green zone cave. This cave is possibly one of the easiest in ARK, especially when you have a drake, as you can just go into invisible mode, walk past all the creatures and reach the artifact and collect it without trouble. So once that was done, I got back to base and the mutated female was grown and I hatched a male with the same stats. On the first batch of eggs from the new male, I got another mutation, which turned out to be another health mutation. So whilst that one grew up, I went and collected some has gear, flew down to the red zone to take on the second easiest cave, which is odd considering it's in the red zone, which is the most difficult places out of the 3 on the map. And the reason this cave is so easy is because once again you can just go into invisible mode and bypass every single creature in the cave and get the artifact. I left the cave with the artifacts in my possession and returned back to base, where I now had 2 of the 3 artifacts and the alpha tributes. With that male now fully grown, I restarted the breeding process and continued the mutation grind. First batch unfortunately did not give me any useful mutations, but I did get some cool pink ones. In fact, I would struggle to get the next mutation as I began killing quite a few babies, so I gave up and realised it was 90% night again, so I decided to hit up the surface once more. The first drop I found had some decent chitin armour and a simple pistol, and then a yellow drop which had Ascendant assault rifle, and then a terrible one. But this yellow one made up for it, as it was Saddle Haven with a basilisk and a few other ones. I found a few more terrible drops which I won't even go over what was inside because they were that bad. And then one that had a really nice AR blueprint in and a roll rat saddle. But soon later it was 7 AM, so I decided to leave as I didn't want to be burnt alive. Back at base I stored all my new good blueprints and all the physical items I'd gotten. So then when I returned back to base I continued to try to get more mutations, but soon realised that the saddle blueprint that I found, I was going to need to craft almost 20 of those so that I could use my megalos in the boss fight. And the saddle was quite expensive in regards to fibre and hide, so I made a chainsaw and went out killing and farmed the bodies with the chainsaw, as it's the most efficient tool to get hide. When I returned back to base I'd collected around 4,000 of it, and then I stopped the mutation grind and thought that the megalos probably would be good enough, So I began raising up 2 identical male and females with the mutations to begin breeding for boss dinos. The first egg hatched, dropping triplets who were aptly named Boss Megalo 1, 2 and 3. The next egg to hatch gave twins, and I also made sure to imprint them all. Soon after followed Boss Megalos 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Before I got bored and allowed them all to grow up as I attempted the Blue Zone cave. The cave entrance is underwater, so bringing scuba is advised, and then you will reach a crouch point where unfortunately a rock drake doesn't fit. So I cried it up and continued on one of the boss megalos I had brought with me. I somehow made the jump down towards the tunnel section and entered the water and began to kill the eels and jellyfish. But I got dismounted by a jellyfish that I missed and during an earthquake. But thankfully I was able to get back on my megalo and kill it. I finished the first water section, killed a few more eels and stuff, and then entered the next and final water part. I got out the water without much hassle and collected the third and final artifact. I cryoed up my megalo and returned back to base and stored the third and last artifact. One thing I hadn't done yet was tame a reaper, so I began making a shield and a couple sets of has gear. One thing I knew about reapers is that if you are close enough on a drake, its hairs will stand up like this. And that was because I was near a reaper. It was only level 25, so I'll go find another one. The next I found was a level 10, and well, that reaper is lucky it's even made it into the video. So was this level 5 reaper. The levels weren't getting much better either, as I found a 45 and a 25, and then I finally found a good one, a level 110. But by the time I got my megalo out, it had been replaced with a level 5, which was good actually, as I needed to kill a reaper first to get the reaper pheromone glands. I searched around a bit more for that level 110 but found another 5, so killed it. I finally found a reaper that was worth it being impregnated from, a level 115. I thought I'd gotten the reaper super low, but after checking its health I saw it still had 14k, which meant 13 or so more hits as my megalo was doing around 1k damage. I then turned off my light pet, ate the gland and waited. Oh, it's doing it. And it's done. Wait, oh, I should have killed the Reaper for the XP. Right, let's go kill things. Found this Reaper behind the mesh and thought it might be an easy kill. And it was, as I got the remaining XP possible for my baby Reaper. I rushed back to base with just 30 seconds left and then quickly built a small enclosure as I remembered they can be quite aggressive just after birth. I gave birth, claimed it, and quickly placed the remaining gate as it killed me. So I think the enclosure was probably a good idea. I quickly ran back in to save my bulb dog and get my things, and just as I'd done that, the Reaper turned into a juvenile, so now it was back to being friendly. With it fully raised, I had to immediately give it a try. And to be honest, it wasn't actually that much better than my Megalos in terms of damage, but of course it has damage reductions with light. I almost killed it to a pack of Ravagers as it survived with just 1k health. Not wanting to lose it so soon, I healed up at a healing plant and then continued leveling it up. Once back at base, I continued to get some more Megalos going, and this is basically all I did for the next few days, hatching and naming the babies. And also beginning to level up the first few who have fully grown up, a process which was going to take quite a few days as I needed to breed up more Megalos to get babies so I could kill them for the XP. But I was starting to now get more leveled up than not. One thing I was still yet to do was to make them all saddles, so I took out one of my leveled Megalos out to go farm up some hide. And another thing I was yet to do was make enough Cryopods to transport them all to the terminal. So I went around base collecting all the materials and then headed off on my Drake to go find a drop. This green drop was the first one that I found, so I placed all the materials in it and began crafting 20 Cryopods. Once back at base, I farmed some fibre, as that was one of the other materials with hide I needed a lot of for the saddles. I had already crafted 2 and was now able to craft a further 2 more, and after another trip of getting fibre, I was able to make a further 4. To make more though, I needed more metal, so a quick trip to the Blue Zone for that was needed, but I ended up bringing back a little visitor. Huh? What's going on? Wait, that's not my Reaper. What the hell? How's that got here? Whilst the metal smelted, I saw it was 90% night again, and I probably wouldn't have another chance to go to the surface in this 100 days, and I still wanted a shotgun, and I still needed to kill an Alpha Reaper, so I cryoed up some megalos and made my way over to the surface on my Drake. That's an Alpha Reaper! That's an Alpha Reaper right by the entrance! Wow, that didn't take long. I quickly threw out my 2 megalos and jumped down to take it on. First I had to kill a few normal Reapers and then entered war against the Alpha. It was going well, but then for some reason all the Reapers in that area just began burrowing, for no reason. And they just refused to come back up as well. One theory that I thought is that maybe because it was 6 AM, they knew the sun was about to rise so they burrowed. But I then camped the entrance to the surface and saw that the flames only returned at 11 AM, so I had just no clue what happened. Nevertheless, I stayed at the entrance for a few hours until the flames settled and returned back onto the surface. I checked the entrance to see if maybe the Reaper would reappear, but it was gone. So I searched around some more and found a red drop with possibly the best loot I've ever had on ARK. Inside was a 374% damage shotgun, 176 armor Drake saddle and 770 hazard boots, and it is quite literally the best drop I've ever had on ARK. I looted another drop which had some flak leggings with almost 1000 armor until I found something quite interesting. That's an Alpha. 100% that's an Alpha. Look at the size of it. That is an Alpha. It's so close to the other one. That is so lucky. So I threw out my megalos once again and begun my assault on the local Reapers. Before getting into the fight with the Reaper, I quickly stopped off at this blue drop in the way, which wasn't very good, and then I went to war with the Alpha Reaper. Let's go, that's everything done, man. Alpha Rockwell, here I come. Before leaving the surface, I had enough time to loot some more drops. I returned back to base after one of the most successful surface trips ever. A new shotgun, some good armor, and most importantly, the Alpha Reaper tribute. I then got back to work crafting some more megalo saddles, as I had crafted 15 of them so far over the last 10 days or so. But I still needed 3 more, and only needed metal, which was already smelting. So I began saddling up the megalos who were healed and then cryoed them. One thing I did need to do before Rockwell was getting more shotgun ammo, so I took my Anki out to go farm some rocks to get flint and stone to make spark powder, combine it with charcoal to make gunpowder. I used that gunpowder to make simple bullets and then used that to make shotgun ammo. I also made some assault rifle ammo for the AR that I had found on the surface as well. While stuff crafted at base, I went to the terminal to check exactly what I needed, and there were still a few things I'd forgot. I didn't have any nameless venom, basilisk scales or rock drake feathers yet, so I then had to go to the blue zone to kill some basilisks with my megalo, and then to the red and to the rock drake trench to kill rock drakes for their feathers, and then back up to the green zone to kill the remaining few basilisks. I then popped back to the blue zone without a light pet to kill nameless to get their venom, which is actually a pretty rare drop. And with almost everything ready, I flew down to the terminal with all of my megos ready to be thrown out, as I was playing on PvE and cryo sickness was a thing for me, so I had to throw them all out well before I took on the boss so that it would give them enough time to wake up from their cryo sickness. So I then flew back to base and waited for them all to gain consciousness again using the tracker to check, and that means it is now boss fighting time. So I picked up all the brews that I had been collecting from drops and a bunch of food, picked up my best light pet and made some last minute shotgun ammo. Then I collected all the tributes and nameless venom and made my way down to the terminal for the last ever time. But when I arrived, I noticed something off. Almost all of my creatures had fallen through the mesh, and after entering ghost mode I was indeed able to confirm that. So I hope you don't mind that I'm just going to use some commands to get them all back up. And as I brought up the last one, everything was ready to go, so I summoned in the Alpha Rockwell. I soon found an issue though. As I spawned in the fight, I had forgot to throw out one of my megalos who was now sitting in my hotbar. Despite that, we move. Let's get these down. My dinos managed to get the first tentacle down as I focused on shooting the Rockwell's explosive balls before they hit me. I continued to work my dinos around the boss, defeating one tentacle at a time, and soon later they defeated the last one and I was able to take aim at Rockwell for the very first time. I managed to get Rockwell's health down by a quarter or so, and that was the end of the first wave, and it was time to move on to the second wave. We quickly worked our way round for the second time and defeated all the tentacles before shooting at Rockwell once again. I had gotten him down to about 3/4 health, and now it was time for phase 2, where nameless begin to spawn, and light pets don't stop them either. So with nameless to look out for, you have to keep your eye on the ball, which I didn't do for a second as one destroyed my armour. My dinos then got the last tentacle, and I was shooting again at Rockwell as I brought his HP down to about 50% this time. Then we began the next phase, and the absolute chaos of this fight was starting to catch up as I got hit by some balls and then slapped in the face with a tentacle. There were also now shocking tentacles which dismount you, and in this boss fight, that ain't good. Oh no. Oh, can I get back on? Oh, my bulldog, no! Oh, he's on his own mission now. Alright, come on, let's go, Rockwell, bring it on. I didn't do too much damage to Rockwell this time, and that's because we're about to enter phase 3. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to start losing creatures now because Reapers are beginning to spawn, so I'm going to have to stay invisible on my Drake and constantly be checking for stamina as I cannot afford to run out of it. By the time we approached the second tentacle, I'd already lost a megalo, and as we continued fighting, I lost another. It was starting to feel like with every tentacle strike we were losing megalos, as I lost a third and then a fourth just seconds later. Which means I'm going to have to finish this boss fight solo with my shotgun, which at least is a good one. Come on. Oh, one more round? I think I should be able to do this though. Right, let's get some stamp whilst those tentacles spawn in. Ah! Oh my god, how many balls are there? No! Oh, I've got to do one more. Come on, this has to be it. What? Oh man. Come on, this is it. This has to be it.
Come on.
Let's go. And Alpha Rockwell was defeated. My 100-day journey comes to an end, and it was a rather successful one. It's been difficult, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you did, remember to like and subscribe as it helps me so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.